I have a friend, a personal trainer. Today, I want to talk about the truth, about losing belly fat. While some people may have a body type that makes it easier for them to gain weight in that area, this accounts for only about 10% of the population. The remaining 90% of people should be able to lose it if they put in the effort, although it depends on their body type. People who don't ask questions can make some effort and get to a certain point, but I believe that most people can achieve their goals if they try. However, when you suggest that they need to exercise in a certain way, they often respond with disbelief, saying that such a level of exercise is impossible for them. They might feel that they can't dedicate that much time or that they can't realize such changes in their lives. Additionally, there are advertisements for supplements that imply that exercise is extreme or unreasonable, which makes me question how we perceive exercise. I often think while watching these ads that losing belly fat and body fat isn't an impossible task, it's simply a matter of returning to a previous state. But what does it mean to return to that state? Perhaps it means that the way we are currently living is what we consider a normal life. I think so, but this is not normal. I believe that it is not normal. What is normal? I think we need to consider this over a much broader range, in a wider world, and over a long span of time. Otherwise, we won't be able to see things clearly. So, when it comes to whether exercise is tough or not, what I think is that, well, humans are animals. Just like dogs and monkeys, we have lived in a similar way as our companions, and it is natural for us to move as much as they do. We should consider how much they move, like dogs or monkeys. Of course, they move around to search for food and engage in various activities. For example, if you observe monkeys in a monkey mountain, they are constantly moving around. Even when it's cold, they are still climbing and staying active. Similarly, stray dogs, unlike those kept at home, tend to roam around quite a bit. This is really just normal animal behavior. Therefore, humans should be the same. We should naturally have bodies that are meant to move every day. I believe we need to change our standards and mindset regarding how much we should be moving. Modern life has changed significantly in the last 50 years, or even over the past century. The invention of the car is about 100 years old, and even a century ago, most ordinary people did not own cars. For ordinary people, owning a car has been the norm for about the last 50 years, and before that, people were much more active in a modern sense. Even considering the conveniences that have developed over the last century, it has only been about 100 years. Before that, there were thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of years of time. During that period, mammals, like the Indian elephant and other creatures, moved in a very primitive way, living actively. In comparison, we have become incredibly less active. For 50 years, for 100 years, it's been about this much. Being here, it's hardly even dust. That's the feeling. So when it comes to the body as a mammal, it hasn't changed at all. On the contrary, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it's essentially the same as it was hundreds of millions of years ago. So suddenly it stopped moving. It suddenly reached a level where it could only move this little, despite having a body that used to move so much. Bridging that gap is essentially what exercise is about. So, if you think about the lives of my grandfather and those before him, they would easily walk 10 kilometers to go somewhere and come back. Now, we aim to achieve that in a shorter amount of time, which requires us to consider efficiency. Considering efficiency means engaging in intense exercise for a short period to expend energy, and we need to do some tough workouts to improve hormonal functions. Well, that's how it becomes. That's just normal walking. In that case, it's not unusual to walk 10 or 20 kilometers, just like people from my grandfather's generation did. We need to engage in such activities. However, that's quite difficult nowadays. So, while you might think of exercise as a bit tough or challenging, we need to do it every day to make up for that. I hope you consider this as a standard for the amount of exercise or movement we should be doing. So, to be honest, the 20 back lunges I mentioned for 3 sets are about this much. It's not that difficult. And I actually want people to do it regularly. However, in our current daily lives, we have become less active and started eating more. We've begun to eat a variety of foods. The way we eat has changed significantly, especially over the past few decades. But even if we look back a bit further, compared to the history I mentioned earlier, it's quite different. When compared to millions or even billions of years, the changes over the past few decades or centuries have been quite dramatic. The original eating habits date back to a long time ago. This is true even in the times that are covered in history books, or even in eras that are not recorded in history. The history books typically cover the last few hundred years, but before that, the focus was primarily on consuming the raw ingredients themselves. Well, whether it's vegetables, meat, or fish, even if humanity has produced grains by shedding blood, we have eaten the ingredients themselves to some extent. The processed forms have certainly increased. Especially with flour, it's no longer just wheat, it's flour. It gets ground down into a fine powder, then kneaded and shaped into various products. So in reality, we could still eat the grains in their original form. First, it takes time to chew. Then, the digestive process in the stomach and intestines also takes time, so food enters slowly and blood sugar levels do not rise significantly. However, if we consume processed foods without properly chewing, the blood enters the system rapidly, leading to an increase in blood sugar levels. Of course, this applies to everyone, including Sato. I believe we should focus more on primitive ingredients. That's why I eat brown rice. By the way, when it comes to brown rice, there are concerns about pesticide residues, but this can be largely avoided by choosing reduced pesticide or organic options. Additionally, I think it's good to prepare meat and fish in a simple way, cutting them normally and cooking them without grinding them into a paste. Using vegetables as they are and preparing them in a straightforward manner is also beneficial. When I reflect on my eating habits over the years I've been alive, what is considered normal now is quite different from what it was when I was born. It hasn't changed much, and while things are more amazing now, there were also various rich foods available in my time, which is similar to the present. However, we really haven't changed much from the humans who lived tens of thousands or even millions of years ago, so it's better to approach our meals with that mindset. Changing the subject a bit, for example, there are indigenous people in South America or around Mexico. They tend to be shorter and have darker skin, and their diet is quite primitive. Until several decades ago, this was the case. In Japan, we have had white rice for a long time, but they didn't have much of that. It was during the era when Europeans came in that they started to encounter various foods. In just the last 50 to 100 years, with the introduction of flour, sugar, and similar products, it has changed dramatically. As a result, it seems that the indigenous people of Mexico and South America have an extremely high rate of diabetes. Globally, these populations show a significantly high diabetes rate, and this is quite evident. It's a situation where our bodies haven't caught up. However, when Western diets suddenly come in, our bodies are completely unprepared. This has taken a long time to develop. The Europeans have adapted over a span of about 2,000 years, while this change has occurred in just the last 50 to 100 years. As a result, our bodies have simply not adjusted, and this has become quite a significant issue. Therefore, we shouldn't just think about the present, saying that exercise is tough or that we can't eat certain foods, but rather consider a much longer perspective. When I think about it, I realize that this is actually better. I believe we come to understand that our original way of eating and the movements we should be making are important. There are various methods and techniques for both exercise and diet, but ultimately, we need to recognize that our current lifestyle is far removed from our natural state as humans. There is a gap between the two, and it is essential to bridge that gap. Therefore, it requires a bit of effort. There are certainly things we have to do and areas where we need to put in effort, but if we think about it that way, it won't feel so tough. If we believe that we must do it and that it is the way humans should be, then I think we can manage it. I hope you can continue with both exercise and diet without thinking it's too hard or that you want to give up. Today's message really encompasses everything. I hope you remember this moving forward. Let's keep pushing ourselves. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm also on Instagram, so please follow me there as well. For example, that would be great.